Welcome to the Cuckoo's Nest podcast. Our guest for the month of May is none other than Pastor and Dr. Robert O, affectionately known as Bob O. And in the midst of a very busy schedule, and after finishing his solo North Coast tour?
El Norte.
El Norte. I love that in Spanish. He finished a 12-day trek on his bike, solo tour, and then now he has just arrived yesterday, I think, rode in from LA, and this morning, I don't know if you had a chance to rest, but he's with us to do this interview, and hopefully we find out more about who he is, how God has been using him in the last, I don't know how many years, and then also tracing his bio in the history of the Korean American Church, as he's one of the, I've been saying, permanent fixtures, kind of an older brother in the faith. So welcome him, and welcome to.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Your conversion, I mean, would that be a good place to start? Your testimony?
Yeah. So, being an immigrant since 1973, I was 12 years old, last child of 5 children. My father was a medical doctor in Korea, but he wrote something against Dictator Park.
Oh, yeah.
That was not very good with KCIA, Korean CIA, so he had to be called in, harassed, and he thought, well, I don't want to live in a country. So he immigrated through my mom's connection, America, 1973. We came to Los Angeles. We went to Culver City Junior High. And we were the only, about 6th Asian in the school, Culver City Junior High, at the time, when people were unshamefully racist. And now, 48 years later, well, thank God to some people, they are unshamefully racist again and anti-Asian.
It's coming back full circle.
Yeah, full circle in 50 years.
Yeah.
It's kind of sad. Wow. Sad for my children, because I could always go back, but my kid cannot. So anyway, so I was 12, and then I was fine, really happy kid, did well in school. After I got accepted to Berkeley, 1979, I encountered God. In the form of Christ coming to me in real life. And so that was 1979, August 3rd, 9:30 p.m. So after that time, I said, okay, I want to serve you. How do I serve you? So I was zoology major, went to Berkeley, but I immediately changed to philosophy major. And I've been serving him, preaching the gospel since I was 18. So I've been preaching the gospel now for 42 years.
Wow. You encountered Jesus in a personal way. Like, what was that like?
Yeah, so I've been it was a good Presbyterian church. So I was president of my high school department, president of my junior high department. You know, I would actually literally write one scripture a day in my diary and try to memorize. So I love religion. I love, disciplined life. So that was pretty exciting to be part of a church that allowed me to become who I am religiously. But I had no relationship with Christ. And so when I come to realize that on my own, sitting at a revival meeting, there was a revivalist from Korea, from Incheon, preaching away. And then I start hearing the voice of God. The voice of God said, are you a Christian? So I said, of course I'm a Christian. If I don't go to heaven, who will? I was very, very firm on my salvation because I was Pharisee. I knew that keeping the law, keeping the Bible, but I realized I knew about Jesus, but I had no relationship with him.
Let me pause you for a second. So you're telling me that prior to the divine encounter that you had been a church attending Christian. Does that, are you the first generation of believers, or do you come from a family of believers?
My family went to same church in Korea that I went in America. What happened was after we immigrated 73, the pastor of the church in Yeongdeungpo, Korea, also immigrated and planted a church. So I ended up at one church most of my life. So that was interesting. So my mom and dad was atheist, but my mom went to the same church, was a jipsa, was the choir director in Korea. And so, so I what you call the good churchian went to church.
Okay. So you did that for your formative years, but then when you went to college is when you were challenged. You were really
No,
challenged.
no, no. So 17 years old, 18 years old, right before I went to Berkeley, it was actually 20 days before I went to Berkeley, I encountered Christ. So my life changed. So when because I got into Berkeley as a zoology major, but then once I got in, I said I don't want to follow elephants the rest of my life. So I said I want to challenge my faith. So
Why did you? I'm just curious. Why
mm.
did you major in zoology? Did you want to be a vet or something like that?
My uncle was a very famous Yonsei professor of bat. He got PhD studying hibernation, and he was trying to see if we could hibernate so that when time we go to Mars, we could hibernate people. The whole sci-fi kind of stuff. But
Wow.
yeah, so he was pretty famous in Yonsei. He was chosen as the professor of the year. Blah blah blah.
Wow.
So he had pretty profound influence, and I thought, yeah, and I love animals.
So the academic kind of a bone, the genes is kind of it's already in your family sort of.
Yeah, my father's a double PhD, medicine and
okay.
a medical PhD.
Okay,
so
okay.
yeah.
Okay, that explains a lot of things. Yeah. To dig a little bit deeper, because I'm sure, I mean, everybody loves to talk about that encounter moment when you met with Jesus. Like you said that after revival, you started to hear a voice of the Lord that was challenging you. Are you really Christian? And so how did that develop? How did your relationship with the living Lord kind of develop from that moment on?
So the fact that I was saturated with logos was very helpful because once I started hearing the Rhema, the logos became alive. So that night, I remember going home and then opening up my Bible. My eyes fell on Philippians 1:21 because I had a little plaque in front of me. I received it as a winning some kind of Bible memory verse competition I won, and so they gave me a little plaque which read, "Only one life, 'twill soon be past. Only what's done for Christ will last. To me to live is Christ." So I'm like, wow! And then the logos became Rhema. It was dancing before me. So I flipped the Bible, Philippians 1, and then from that on, I was fully engaged in, even more so than before. Because before it was kind of religious activity. I want to read the Bible. I was told to do that. But after that, I went to Berkeley, and that within first year, I was doing 13 Bible studies per week. Because every Bible study I could find at UC campus, I was Methodist, Baptist, Charismatic, non-Charismatic, tongues from the devil, tongue is the only way of salvation, Catholic. I did all the Bible study.
Wow.
So I saturated myself with Word of God.
Wow. So at that moment when it came to life, basically you said that you knew the scripture. So you knew the scripture, but at that moment it was becoming more tangible. It wasn't just an intellectual reality, but it became like your whole reality. Would you say that's fair?
Yes, existential reality.
Yeah. Wow. And when you went to Berkeley, you studied philosophy. Why did you choose philosophy? I mean, that's a huge leap from zoology to philosophy.
Well, because I believe Jesus was the greatest philosopher who ever lived.
Okay.
And we tend to make our Eastern faith religion and Western philosophy. And I believe it's same. So it's funny how the philosopher of the West always said, "Oh, so are you studying Eastern philosophy? We're studying philosophy." I said, "No, we're both studying philosophy.
Yeah.
You happen to have a Western perspective.
Yeah.
We have East." And so to me, at age 18, when I say I want to study philosophy, a lot of pastors warned me saying that if you study philosophy, you're going to lose faith. So I said, well, good, then I'll lose faith. If my faith is not as strong as the philosophy, then I rather study philosophy. And so,
wow,
because I believe that if God that I encounter is real, then He'll keep me, real in my faith. So I tend to really think that people really somehow, and I think the trend started with evangelical movement because they really they make you check out your brain before you come to church, and I think that's ridiculous. It's so sad.
Yeah.
And so we have all these shallow theologians that are talking about nonsense, and that's why we created this crazy evangelicals in America. I serve in Cambodia, and I've been to 64 countries. A lot of the Eastern, like Taiwan, China, and the global leaders I meet, they said, sir, we don't call ourselves evangelical anymore because of all this crazy
There's a
nonsense.
stigma.
Yeah, to be evangelical, and they say,
It's-
"Oh, you want to be evangelicals like American evangelicals?" And they said, "No, no,
So it's not a good thing.
it's not a good thing anymore."
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I think you're referring to the anti-intellectualism
yeah,
of
Yeah.
I mean, is it really? Do I want to say North American anti-intellectualism? It's kind of coming from the backlash of the post-Enlightenment
right.
because of evolution theory and all of those things. The church is kind of pushing back and really trying to uh, silence the inquiries. Like if you have an inquisitive mind, if you want to probe, if you want to learn more, we just come to the scripture and say, there's a scripture is enough.
Right,
Right.
right.
That's sort of what's going on.
Yeah, and also just I also have a Dr. Bible TV at YouTube, and so weekly I've been presenting a book. Recently, not recently, since September 20th last year, so it's only been 8 months. I think I posted 1,600 posting.
It's crazy. I know the rate. I'm like, how do you do that? I have trouble doing one episode a month. It's one episode a month. I do devotional once a week.
Yeah.
That's hard enough. I'm watching you doing it every day. I go, where do you find the discipline and the time to do that? It's kind of like an obsession.
Yeah. So,
how do you do it? It's crazy.
So I've been challenging, especially missionaries, saying that, hey, you should at least read a book a week if you want to be effective leader. Come on, book a week is not a lot.
Okay.
But so I started a club and no one joined. So I said, okay, what the heck, I'll just do it. So from 8 months, I think I posted like 100 books, because
oh wow,
stuff that I
from
read
April,
September last year.
September of 2020.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the book that I posted was called Jesus, the Greatest Philosopher, or something like that. So I actually taught a course at Royal University of Phnom Penh in Cambodia. It's a secular school, national university, considered Harvard of Cambodia. And so I studied master level, East-West, metaphysics of East and West.
Yeah.
So I was posting for them. And then I thought, they think like, Jesus was just religious leader. I said, no, he was the greatest philosopher. I'll prove it to you. So I read a book, I posted, and then we have a discussion with them and how he was no longer. And then we got into this debate. Yeah. He said, one of my students said, sir, do you think if Buddha and Jesus met, you think Jesus would be nice to Buddha? I said, of course, that's his creature, Yeah. And Buddha never claimed to be God. That Buddhism is godless religion. He said, oh, yes, sir. Well, then what's the problem? Jesus claims to be God. And Buddha is his creature. So, of course, you'll love him. They have a wonderful conversation.
Yeah. I've heard this. I don't know if you've heard it. There's a text, a Buddhist text called Hwaumgyong. And in there, Buddha says, after I am gone, there will be a person coming by the name of Yaso.
Oh.
And from when that moment on, forget everything I said, just listen to him. I don't know if this is like a hearsay or I don't know. I heard it from a testimony from Park Hyojin 장로님. I don't know if you ever heard of him. He did prison ministries for a long time because he was a prison warden,
right?
A Christian prison warden. But anyway,
you should want to double check that. But it would be fantastic if it's true. Yeah.
I always thought that Jesus was not a philosopher per se, but he's already the fulfillment of all philosophical pursuit because he's truth. And the quest of philosophy is in search of truth. And so so like if you know Jesus personally, you've already attained to the highest level of whatever is to be known.
Right.
I mean, whenever we read Paul, that's what we see. We see like he's so sold on this, and there's nothing else can. He will actually use very highfalutin Greek literature and philosophy and expound it. So, for those of us who know Jesus, I feel like philosophy could be instrumental in apologetics. Right. I mean, I feel like it's no longer the quest anymore, but our responsibility is to hear the truth.
Right.
Let me explain why this is the truth and why. I don't know. I mean, that's just my thoughts.
No, I agree. That's good.
In Berkeley, you started ministry, and then after you graduated, what did you do?
Well, I wanted to experience secular markets, so I worked for copier retail store for I think 2 extra years, and then when came to Fuller, 1986. So graduated 84, came to Fuller 86. By then I already had one child, ready to go for the second, and so yeah.
And then did your church planting, did that begin after Fuller?
Right. So Fuller was done 89. I took 1 year at South Bay OMC, and then 91 I planted my first church in my living room with 4 people.
Oh wow!
February 3rd, 1991. Yeah.
Oh,
So 1991, February 3rd, I began first Miss City Oikos.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then next 20 years planted 5 churches.
Wow. And are these are still churches are still in operation?
Yeah, so one church that we planted at UCLA became Garden in Northridge.
Oh.
And then one outreach at USC became kind of outreach, kind of 24/7 prayer. Rest, once I gave it to others, they changed the name and then kind of disappeared. Or absorbed into some EM.
Yeah, so you're already a pretty well-known pastor. I mean, I know that you have done many guest speaking arrangements, and there's clips of you doing many both in both languages. And I noticed also, I actually watched some of your YouTube 형이삭 metaphysics.
Right.
And I was like very interested.
Yeah.
And so going back to Fuller, I mean, this is common ground because I went to Fuller also.
Yeah.
I graduated at 2010.
Oh my!
By the time I was there, a lot of the folks that you were familiar with were gone.
Right.
Like I'm sure, what was his name? The church growth guru.
Oh yeah. C.P. Wagner.
Wagner. Yeah, he probably left. Who were some of your favorite professors during your Fuller time?
I didn't have too many.
You didn't have too many favorite professors from them?
Because at Fuller, only thing I did was fight with all the professors, demanding that they teach me yellow theology, and so they didn't know what it was. I said, and so I said, I didn't pay all this money to learn white theology.
So you were like so this conversation was actually going on even when I was there. So you were one of the first guys that was kind of
86.
pushing the envelope. Okay.
86.
Were there others, or were you just the sole voice at the time?
Oh, I'm sure people did.
Okay.
It's just they weren't ready to hear because Fuller could operate fine without doing yellow theology.
Now, what do you mean by yellow theology? That's intriguing. I've never heard that before. Yeah.
So, okay, I went to Fuller and I was so impressed with Sam Gant, who taught Greek. I did intensive Greek to start Fuller, which was, I think, greatest move. If I didn't do that, I'll probably quit. So Sam Gant was just phenomenal Greek teacher, and I learned, because I studied classical Greek, because I was philosophy major. I wanted to read Socrates in Greek, so I took classical Greek. I wanted to read Martin Heidegger, in German, so I took German. So for me to be equipped with philosophical weapon and come to Fuller thinking that I'm going to learn something new, and then I'm sitting there scratching my head like, to me, it was just a bunch of nonsense. I'm like, why are you telling me that I have to read Barth in order to understand Trinity? I don't want to understand Trinity based on Western-centric view, because your axiomatic truth is different than mine. Because your linguistic truth is X can be X and not X at the same time. Whereas and yang, in the Eastern tradition, X can be X and not X and hyper X, triple X at the same time. The coexistence of an entity is not a problem for Eastern mind. It is only a problem for white people. So if you bring your Bible into that level, then Trinity, then when you talk about God, Jesus, and Holy Spirit, then you compartmentalize, segmentize, and then your understanding of Trinity by Barth, I don't want to learn. I just teach me something that is radically different, so and we'll fight. And Colin Brown, systematic one. Colin Brown, I love him. Actually, I went to Fuller because of him.
I love him. Yeah. I had Colin Brown. Yeah.
So Colin Brown, I read his Faith and Philosophy.
Yeah.
I was 18 years old when I read the book at Berkeley. I say, wow, I want to learn from him. So first day I went to his systematic, he said, well, faith is like this. I mean, he's brilliant genius, right? He had 40 books out and coding from each book, and he knew, he's a photographic memory, so you need a chapter, third paragraph, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But the conclusion of the lecture was basically that our faith has to be systematic. So I raised my hand. I said, sir, I disagree. I disagree that my faith about my God has to be systematic. Because, for example, I love my wife. It is most irrational, crazy love. And are you telling me that my faith in God has to be systematic to a point where I have to explain why I love Him? No, then that's not faith. If I believe if it's reasonable, then it's agreement, not faith.
Yeah.
And I said, sir, I don't want you to influence me. Can I write non-systematic, fragmented theology out of your class note? He said yes. So I never attended. I took his class notes, class outline, and then I wrote my own fragmented theology. He loved it, gave me an A. And he said, why don't you write the second class? So I took 2 systematic with him.
Wow.
I got both A's. So point is that I'm not better than systematic. No, we need systematic for people who really think systematically. But we need fragmented theology for people who disagree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me just ask you, pause for a second, because you're talking about categories that for the layman, it's not really, we don't really know what systematic is vis-a-vis like fragmented. But are there other alternative theologies other than what so-called, right now we have the binomial opposition of you presenting is systematic as opposed to fragmented. Is there some other kinds of theologies?
Of
like
course, yeah.
Grassroots theology or things like that?
Yeah. There should be a lot. And so now that moves us to the whole polycentric theology. Polycentric theology, it means that every nation should have their own theology based on their philosophy. So like Andrew Walls talks about that from the African context. So actually I did a paper at Yale Edinburgh series like a couple of years ago. And I love Andrew Walls because he, in the mission field, realized that you cannot teach Western theology to Afrikaans because their whole disposition is different. And so he's saying that Africa should come up with their own theology, all creation narratives, all that. And especially for me to teach a class on metaphysics at Cambodia.
Yeah.
And the whole challenge is for us is, as a Western educated person, so I'm challenging my student to think about creation, because and I said, hey, God created, according to Bible, God created universe out of nothing.
Yeah.
And so this is graduate level student, and we're learning Martin Heidegger, what is nothing. So was ist nicht? So the guy raised his hand and said, sir, the word nothing in Khmer is soun, but soun is never nothing; it's always something. Huh. So their concept of nothing don't exist. So for you to claim, we don't have any problem with your Christian narrative on creation. We just have problem with that it was from nothing that became something. So I said, you know what? Why don't you write your own epistemology and then write your own creation theory based on out of the Old Testament, right? So that's what polycentric theology is. No one should read Barth. No one should read Tillich. No one should read anybody. The white people's theology should not be read. It should be just the Bible and their philosophy, and then reinterpret the Bible.
But you know what? Here's a point.
Yeah.
There's a Fuller, Daniel D. Lee. He's one of the Asian. Do you know him?
No.
Okay.
Oh, Daniel. Yeah, the young guy, the bald guy.
Yeah.
I had lunch with him recently.
He's a Barth scholar.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in his writings, basically he says that Barth himself is encouraging contextualization. So basically, Barth is of the leaning that Indonesia, Cambodia, these people from Southeast Asia should have their own contextualized theology.
Oh, yeah.
So that's basically what you're saying.
Yeah,
Barth already said.
No. It's totally different.
Is it different?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So, if that's the case, then it'll be shallow theology or philosophy. So, basically, what Barth and all these guys, even Andrew Walls, are basically saying that you should do your own theology. I said, yeah, I understand. But they still want you to play their game. So in Metaphysics of East and West at Cambodia, I said, yeah. Now listen, what's your definition of soccer? And they said, oh, soccer and football. I said, yeah, but that's not what American think football is. Football is you have to be at least 250 pounds, 6'7" and run like hell. So I told them, look at you guys. You're like 5'2", 5'3" at best, and you are so thin. Don't ever play American football with Americans because they'll kill you. Challenge them on ping pong. So if philosophy, the whole Western concept of understanding reality is football, then East cannot challenge them in their court or play their game. You have to play different game, ping pong. So when Barth and even whole missiology of the contextualization, I read their book, I said,
I see what you're saying.
contextualize it based on your game, man.
Okay.
Where premise is different.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Now I'm kind of getting an idea of where you're at intellectually.
Yeah.
It sounds to me, you are a postmodern scholar. Would you say that? Or
no, I don't want to be categorized, but yeah.
So but that would be the leaning already. You kind of already crossed the boundaries. You're far from the structuralists. Your ideas are already set in the seedbed.
What you're doing is nominalism. So you're categorizing based on the name, and then you're categorizing. So I'm an existentialist. I'm Kierkegaardian follower.
Okay.
Soren Kierkegaard, existentialist, would die. If Soren Kierkegaard found out that he started existentialism, he'll die. Because he was against all that.
The naming and labeling.
Yes. So the whole existential theology, that's why people say that, how do you become Christian? Well, encounter Jesus, man. I said, what do you mean? I said, I don't know. You mean I need to go by 4 spiritual law, and I need to use the evangelical terminology of being saved, once saved, always saved. I said, well, why are you throwing out all this concept that you don't even know what you're talking about? Just live it out. There's a difference between doing ing and being. For example, I suck at surfing, but I try to surf. I'm out there. People think I'm surfing. No, I'm not. I'm just trying to get on the board. So surfing, and then you say, are you a surfer? Oh, no, I'm not a surfer. I'm surfing, but that doesn't make me a surfer. I singing, but doesn't make me a singer, right? Some of the young pastors I know, they're preaching, but they're not preacher. They don't know what preaching is. They're just mimicking, downloading, and go Sermon Central and copying and try to mimic. That's good. You learn. That's how you learn. But there'll come one day you realize, wow. So this is what preaching is. So become a preacher. Like writing. I've been riding motorcycles since I was 15. One day in my writing, I go, hey, I think I'm a writer now. I'm done with riding motorcycle. So it's from ing to er. You becoming the whole person, right?
Yeah.
And so I think being Christian is, a lot of Christians are trying to live as a Christian. But do you really become Christian? When? When the realization that, wow, he's in me and I am in him. I no longer live because Christ in me. And because Christ in me is greater than anything that's in the world. Hell break loose, but I can have shalom beyond any understanding because Emmanuel, God is with me. That kind of reality. So I try to explain being Christian not through formulas and 4 spiritual law and join the church membership, or I've been baptized, all that kind of category, naming and all that, and gives them false hope, And,
okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So okay, what you're saying is that our formulations are really deficient. It's really lacking. It will not have you get the genuine encounter. Last time I met Pastor Bob
at a BCD Sundubu.
Yeah, good memory. So he brought this book, Nehemiah Leadership, which he co-wrote Elijah's Song, and I just kind of I just put it on the shelf. I didn't look at it until recently, and I'm looking at it and I'm going, there's very helpful acrostic mnemonic devices to allow us to live out these principles of leadership. And I don't know what led you to give me this, because I have been praying that my leadership would be more effective. Like I have strengths in many areas in my pastorate, but I thought to myself, in the area of leadership, I could probably definitely use more help. And then I also Nehemiah is a special book, because when I was at my first full-time pastorate at Dongchin Church, that was the first series I started. I did the Nehemiah, because it was for a lot of EM pastors. Our main assignment is to rebuild what had been just torn down.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like every church I've gone to is like 5 people that were left over, and like starting from scratch.
Right.
And so it was very meaningful. And then during the pandemic, you did the prayer-driven life.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is a PDF that you made available to all the pastors.
Right.
Something that's already very unique about you is that you don't fit. You don't fit the cookie cutter mold. It's like that part is already you're resistant to outward conformity. It seems like. Would that be safe?
No.
No. Am I? Is it fair?
I'm just me, and so I guess the rest of the pastoral society do not fit me. But I'm not trying to be anti anything. I'm just trying to be me. So my struggle has been knowing myself. And so when I studied philosophy, I was such an introvert, and I was so conscious of other people. My mom really didn't think I was going to go to college because something happened in our formative years. Me and my brother, who's 1 year older.
Okay.
We have three oldest sister who are brilliant. They're all scholars. They're all like borderline geniuses, actually. So, and they did so well in school. Me and my brother, we made a pact in high school or junior high and high school. We're not going to let our parents determine who we are based on our GPA. Oh. So we got beat up. We said we'll never show you our GPA, and we signed our parents' signature and handed in. So my mom didn't know if I'm ever going to go to college because she didn't know how well I was doing. Because in high school, I had two jobs. I would be janitor, I would work at 7-Eleven, and I'll come home at 3 in the morning, go to school. Wow. And so they did, 너 언제 공부하니? So when do you start? I said, Mom, don't worry, I got this, So, and then when we went to Berkeley, she flipped. I'm like, she's like, you went to Berkeley, So I said, yeah, So if I didn't do a couple jobs, probably went to better school. But anyway, so, but the point is that because I was so shy, I didn't have too many friends. But when I encountered Jesus, I said, how am I going to live my life if I'm so shy and cannot really share the gospel? So in the public. So the people I still admire is the street preacher. I mean, people trash talk about them. I said, don't shoot them down until you could reproduce their song, Right. So, I mean, I love all the street preachers and I love what they do. And so I try to learn at Berkeley because there are a lot of street preachers at Berkeley, 1979. Wow. And so I really had to I wanted to develop thick skin. So I would, I would do something outrageous, to like, I would not take shower for a couple months. I'll wear a 25 cents jacket. I'll wear a hat during summer and then put flowers all over my head. And so that I would, in a way, strengthen myself so that I don't really give a hoot about what other people think about me. How they judge me was irrelevant to me. So I trained myself 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years later. So then I said, who am I? Well, how do I want to live my life? Not based on what people think, what people should expect. And so I said, Lord, what do you want me to do? Even my hairstyle, tell me what to do, And so then at one point I had long hair, at one point I shaved. And so it's still pursuit of being someone that is authentic. So just like Bob Dylan said, they will categorize you and then do away with you. And I don't want to be categorized. Oh. I don't want to be the number.
This is really, really interesting because let me tell you, because I romanticize that era, that the 70s. You grew up through the 70s, right? Yeah. And what you're talking about is the tendency of you want to be authentic. You don't want to sell out to. Basically, that's what it is. It's in pursuit of your originality. Like you don't want to compromise that. Anyway, you were talking about art, and you this is your product. This is your doodlings, your scrap.
Right. So
I saw some of this. Actually.
Yeah. So I do a lot of doodling, collect stickers, and so this was what year was this? 2018. Yeah. Then I'll take picture and make it into book. Yeah. 20 years ago, Lord told me to publish books. So as an artist, I'm a poet too. I was just with this. English poetry doesn't speak to me because my heart language is still Korean. Okay. So I only write in Korean. Yeah. Publish in Korean. Yeah. When it comes to poetry, but technical books I cannot write in Korean. So technical books like biblical tithing, I will write in English. My PhD turned into a book. So the in a way hats that I'm wearing. I'm a professor. I'm a poet, and I'm an artist. as a poet, and then I'm mainly an apostle. So I do a lot of apostolic kind of thing,
Yeah.
traveling, breaking new grounds, conquering a nation, set up. So these are the things that God demands you to be at the moment.
Okay.
Not, I don't do it because I'm an apostle. I don't do it because I'm a poet. I do whatever that God requires me to be at that moment. And 20 years later, I published 8 poetry books. It's not like I'm set out to publish books. And you mentioned something about wanting to publish this for you.
Oh,
So,
thank you.
yes.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Oh man. You know what? I will go and buy the rest of your books online because I know that you have like how many books do you have on Amazon?
64.
64 books. My gosh. And then they all have like curious numbers like 777. You know? I saw that one, the one 천상병.
Right.
When you went to Indonesia.
Cambodia.
Was it
천상병 Cambodia 가다.
That's
Poetry.
the one. Yeah.
Right.
Was it all in Korean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do read in Korean, by the way.
good,
I do.
good.
So
you know
thank
why
you
it's
so much for the
772?
gifts.
You know what 772 is? 772.
That's like a kind of a derogatory
No,
term.
no. So 772. So this is what happened.
Yeah.
I'll tell you. So I found out that I could publish through Amazon.
Yeah.
So I went crazy because 20 years ago,
Yeah.
in my 40-day fasting, Lord said, write, I shall provide. I'm like, write what, Lord? I didn't know because I write music, I write poetry. So I start writing music, make CD, I write poetry books, but no one wants to publish my book. So I said, okay, but I wrote for 20 years. I wrote 60 books, I guess, but no one wanted to publish. But Amazon, you could self-publish. So I said, you know what, this is great. So last year, I published 50 books.
In 1 year?
1 year.
These are all books that have been sitting in your drive.
Right. So I actually authored 15 books last year. And published
15 books in 1 year?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, because...
What a way to spend the pandemic year.
Yeah, well, because of all the outline and everything was in there. I need to just edit it, but it was never been published. A lot of the books that I already... So my point is, this is exciting for you because...
I mean, eventually I want to produce something of value.
For example, you know that I did 12-day motorcycle tour.
Yes.
LA, I went all the way up to Seattle, came back in 12 days.
And I know you mentioned you were writing and writing.
Right.
Yeah.
You know how I did was I preached my Philippians 1:21 message at the Catalyst, my church in Long Beach.
Yeah.
And then there's 45-minute sermon. Once you send it to YouTube, you know that they transcribe for you.
When you send it to Amazon?
No, through YouTube.
Oh, yeah. There's the transcription. Okay,
right, subtitle, right?
Okay, yeah.
So what I do is then I click it, and then I download all my transcription and edit it out.
That's pretty smart. Pretty smart. Okay.
So, and then I have all my books already framed at 6x9. So then you dump it.
Yeah.
My 45-minute sermon has become 20-page book.
Wow.
And then I just edit it out. And then 12 days of riding motorcycle, I process, what does to live means. To live in Greek is Zen. And the book that changed my life was Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance by Robert Persick.
Huh.
So I thought, you know what? Why don't I call it Zen and the Art of Living for Christ? And then I'm writing a book as I ride my motorcycle.
Yeah.
So that morning, 4 a.m, I get up, I get on my YouTube, because I've been doing it for 50 days now, for 8 months. I said, hey guys, I'm going to stop talking about Acts, but I'm going to talk about Philippians 1:21. My meditation yesterday was this, and I do that 15 minutes. And then, sure enough, all the transcriptions done. So then I put it, day 1 transcription, day 2 transcription. I already have 140 page.
Okay, for all of you viewers now, Dr. Bob O is giving us know-how on how to write a book within about 12 days. If you have your thoughts, if you have stuff that you put up on YouTube, transcription, you have the order, the outline.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. You should charge money for this.
Because you're much better talker than writer.
Most people are.
Most people are.
Huh.
How many people that author a book? But how many people brilliant talker? Well, they should talk. So this is it. So you have outline, and then just talk. See, I already had outline, apostle, pastor, artist, APA. So then whatever I say in YouTube, they transcribe free for you. And trim it out, edit out. And then I send it through Grammarly, process it, and Grammarly check all your grammars. And a lot of times I don't even check grammars. Who cares? I just have creative grammar, right?
Well, I mean, that's one of the things I appreciate about you. You're a free spirit that way. But I do want to ask
Yeah.
you, have there been some theologians that have, other than Kierkegaard, that has influenced you in a positive way? You mentioned how you enjoyed Colin Brown. Colin Brown is amazing. I mean, not for me personally. It's not because he was his erudition, not because he was such a scholar, but I remember taking his class when he was at his twilight years. During he was like old, and during a summer intensive, he would pray in that British accent. God, give me the stamina, and I know he meant that,
Yeah.
you know. And he would be teaching that very lengthy class, and I found it so. I became a systematician during that class because I saw the value in I guess just the systematic organization of the stuff that had been discussed in the prior centuries before my arrival. So now, have there been some teachers, folks? I mean, you said you were arguing with the teachers, but I happen to have some guys that I really, really admire. I like from Fuller. Are there any teachers, any both living and dead, that you have a fondness towards, that you've ever seen as like a mentor?
Well, I was working full time as import-exporter.
At the time when you were attending Fuller?
Yes, and I was working at Brian Baptist Church as English minister. I was
Wow. How long were you there at Brian as an EM pastor?
1986 through 1990.
Really?
1989. So,
wow.
Get this. I was working full-time as import-exporter. I was working full-time as a church EM pastor, and I was doing 5 Bible studies and preaching like 3 times a week.
When you sleep, I mean,
so the Fuller was my priority number 3.
Oh, okay.
So
it was kind of like
I hardly went, but I took full load, so I finished in 4 years or 3 years.
That is amazing.
Yeah. So, but my point is, so what happened is that Colin Brown, I was really blessed by Sam Gant, Greek, and then I took Colin Brown.
Okay.
And I'm so impressed with him, his character, that allowed me to write my fragmented theology.
Yeah.
So I
passed away, by the way.
Huh?
He passed away.
Oh, recently.
Yeah, couple of, I want to say 2 years ago.
Oh,
in his home in Altadena.
Oh, wow.
He passed away in peace, quietly, in the presence of his family.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I really respected him.
Yeah.
And so I took one class from him other than systematic, which was Soren Kierkegaard.
Oh, he taught Kierkegaard, of course, and then, of course, Kierkegaard is your teacher,
right? So what happened is that it was upper division, Fuller. There was about 7, 8 of us.
Yeah, it's like a seminar. It's like a PhD seminar.
Right.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I remember after first class was over, everybody left. I sat there, started weeping, because I said I wanted to. Because I took existentialism at Berkeley too, but they didn't teach Kierkegaard at the time. But I just was weeping. I said, I finally found somebody I could give my rest of my life to. So I remember going to bookstore and bought everything that Kierkegaard ever wrote. I brought it home. I said, Jenny, I'm Kierkegaardian. I'll be existentialist. And so here we go. And that journey took me into writing a poetry book dedicated to Kierkegaard, Either Or. And it's now in the Library of Copenhagen. Kierkegaard study library. So, yeah, this is crazy story.
Wow. Now, this is surprising because Kierkegaard is European. Now, you seem to have this adamant stance where you want theology or philosophy. You want thoughts that are not exclusively European, Anglo, or whatever. And yet, Kierkegaard, why Kierkegaard? What is about him that you find so intriguing, or something that, why do you resonate with him?
Well, because when I was 18, I went to Berkeley studying philosophy. And I was at the Duino Hall, the famous hall where the riots, hippie movement began. I was sitting there, and there are 25,000 students going back and forth. And then at that moment, I had the existential philosophical reality hit that I told myself, wow, I'm an individual. So I blurted out, wow, I exist as an individual, not in the context of my family, not my friends, not at Berkeley. man, I exist. That's who I am. And that recognition of myself later, at Fuller, I realized that was what Soren Kierkegaard said. He said, when I die, would you put my tombstone, that individual lived and died. So that whole connection with Kierkegaard is that he was only 23 when he wrote against Danish church. And so in a very similar age, I discover who I am and discover that I need to live on my own as who I am, as an individual, not in the corporate sense, not as a rugged individualistic American way. I'm talking about as a healthy person who I believe that we should live in community, but not as disappeared identity. It's got to be individual and yet learn community.
I see. So not your individual person being subsumed by the culture. So that is what is at the core of Kierkegaardian thought.
Right. So my challenge to everybody is don't read those guys. Just do your own philosophy. So there's a difference between philosophy student and philosopher.
Be a philosopher, don't be a student of philosophy.
Right. Just like golf. There are a lot of golf historians talk nonsense about the history of golf.
Yeah.
Just go out there and play golf, man.
Yeah.
Enjoy golf and be expert at your level.
What you're talking about, it might be. I think a few people will get it.
Yeah.
And they'll be able to carry into action. But it's a very. It almost sounds esoteric.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like it's readily accessible. You're talking about a very difficult thing, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
But it's much easier than read all these philosophy books that you don't understand because they write not to you, but to each other. So no one can understand.
Right. For example, Wittgenstein.
Oh, yeah.
I don't understand. I mean, I understand what he's saying.
Yeah.
But I don't understand the value behind his expositions. Because I'm not a logician. I don't know that the formulas that he writes in his treatises. What does that mean? He wrote for Bertrand Russell, right?
Well, so Wittgenstein, I took a whole 20-week course on Wittgenstein at Berkeley.
Yeah.
My associate professor, I just had a cup of coffee and down-to-earth, man-to-man talk. I said, you don't know what the hell he's talking about, right? He
did not.
and you're an associate professor, you're supposed to teach us. It's like, you just don't know anything about what he said because there's early Wittgenstein and later Wittgenstein. Yeah. Wittgenstein was so rich that he didn't have to give a hoot for anybody. He just wrote for himself. Talk about narcissist, and so he didn't care. It's like, I don't have to sell books to make a living, and I don't have to teach you to, so he wrote whatever he wants. None of it's just nonsense, So I said, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. So, and then some people claim to be Wittgenstein expert. Like, I'm talking about Berkeley professor who confessed to me he does not know what the hell he's talking about. So I said, good, then I don't have to take it, So a lot of the philosophers are in this bizarre world of I'm smarter than you because I think I could fake it and make you believe that I understand what I'm reading. Nonsense, So that's why I said, to my philosophers, don't read anything that white people wrote. Just do your own philosophy based on your own understanding of nothing. So right out of what Sohn is, from the Buddhist tradition, and from that tradition, reinterpret the Bible for us so we could understand. Because until St. Augustine, using the Platonic tradition, they believe nothing is not nothing. It was not creation ex nihilo. It was creation of something from something else. But it's that St. Augustine says no, it's something out of nothing, and it became oral tradition, written tradition, now become orthodoxy. So I said no, that's just church. That's just white people talking. So why don't we talk about our narratives? And then I challenged them. Oxford, I got my PhD at Oxford Center for Music Study. I lived there. Oxford has every year, January, have metaphysics essay. And I said, you need to write. So one of the students wrote 80-page brilliant paper on nothingness, and I published book with him. So it's a first book in philosophy from Cambodia, because 1975-79, they burned all the books in Cambodia.
For the Communist Cultural Revolution.
Right. Well, it's Khmer Rouge. Yeah. Cultural Revolution is a little different. It's from China.
Yeah.
Here is a Pol Pot madman burned, year zero Clay, 1975, April, declared, and then he just burned everything. So when we published the book together with Socrates, his nickname, Socrates, And then it became the first philosophy book published in English from Cambodia.
This is the book that you co-wrote.
Right, with him.
So first philosophy book from Cambodia.
In English.
In English, since the burning of all the
Right.
Wow.
So, and I told
That's an
him,
important distinction.
I said, hey, listen, you need to write a book or paper for Oxford paper.
Yeah.
Because no one has right to write about Soon, creation narrative based on Soon than Cambodia. Why would, they don't even have a concept. They don't know what nothing is.
Yeah.
They don't understand what nothing, that is something. Because to them, nothing is a void, vacuum. So that's why, we did Martin Heidegger. Martin Heidegger said, was ist nicht? What is nothing? And you cannot even define what nothing is, then how can you teach anything about something?
Do you like to have these philosophical discussions? Do you have a lot of people that you can do this for hours with? Or do you rather just
I only do it with graduate level students.
Okay.
Not even with undergrad.
Okay.
Because undergrad, they're just learning.
Right.
They're getting their appetite, wet. So for example, my first day, 3-hour lecture at Metaphysics of East and West, I only had 12 students. But they're brilliant students. So
Okay.
I walk up to the podium. I cannot talk about God. I cannot say I'm a Christian. I'm a pastor. I cannot say that. I'm just Professor O.
Okay.
I said, hey, what is truth to you? Oh, according to Plato. I said, I don't care about Plato. What is truth to you? Oh, according to Socrates. No, what is truth? Oh, according to Buddhist tradition. No, what is truth to you that you are willing to die for? And then we go 3 hours later, a couple of my students started weeping. It's like, Professor, just teach us. I said, no, I'm not going to teach you. I'm not going to tell what truth is. It's a journey. Philosophy is pleasure of knowing the truth.
Yeah. You know what this sounds like?
Yeah.
Before I came to Christ, I used to adhere to some Buddhist teachings. And I went to a Buddhist camp.
Uh-huh.
My mom sent me to a Buddhist meditation camp in the mountains in Korea.
Yeah.
And they have a
temple
thing
stay.
Hwadu.
Mm.
You know about that concept, right? It's continually throwing that question until you come to enlightenment, because they have this idea that if you seek and you continue to seek, persistent, then the cosmos, something will happen.
Right.
Is that what you're trying to do with those kids?
So I actually one of the chapter that I'm writing is based on that, because I distinguish two different concepts: reflection and meditation.
Okay.
It's both end. So if you know and yang, there's darkness, and within darkness there's patch of light.
Yeah.
So people talk about how do you do reflection and meditation 7 hours a day? Because I'm riding motorcycle 7 to 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
I don't listen to music. I don't entertain myself, because I think we're entertaining ourselves to death. So I'm just in the morning, I read Bible, and I'm meditating just one verse, 12 days. To me, to live is Christ. Oh, to live, okay. Then reflection is self. I'm asking a question. What is to live? What is to die? What does that mean? And then that's reflection, because it's self-started and you're throwing and you have a topic. So it's self-initiate, you set the topic. And then you throw it out, and then you're writing, and then you go into this mental state. You're looking at the road. I mean, we're riding through Redwood Highway in 101.
Jeez.
Beautiful riding, the sun, the wind's hitting. See, when you're in an insulated box in a car, you don't really travel.
I hear you.
You know what I mean?
Trust me. I know what you're talking
here
about.
Here I am. When I'm coming down from the beautiful mountain and the one side from the desert, I hear hot wave hit, the air, and then here from the cold air. And I mean, it's just fantastic. So now I'm in this reflective mode, becomes meditation. What is meditation? Meditation is something from God speaks to you.
Yeah.
So the question I threw out, and I'm reflecting, then it throws it back. It's in relationship.
Yeah.
To live through relationship. Oh gosh, reflect. So actually, when I took Kamdo, they ask you to meditate, and I was laughing because they say, oh, it's Eastern meditation. No, it's not Eastern. It's just Kamdo meditation, and that's what I do anyways as a Christian. So meditate. I mean, King David said, "I meditate in your words day and night." What do you think he was doing? Eastern meditation, So of course, because Christianity is from Asia, so it was Eastern meditation. So they made into some quirky, some crazy conceptual, methodology that doesn't work. So it is this state of God speaking to you, and you take it, and then you meditate, and then turn into reflection point, throw that out, and then you have this back and forth, and you see imagery, you hear the voice, it's fantastic. That's what I did 7-8 hours. Then next morning I share that. Now it's transcribed. It's gonna be a book.
I want to just really quickly talk about this book. I haven't read it.
Yeah.
I just have noticed some glimpses of what it is that you're talking about here. In the issue of missiology, I believe that you're talking about the problem of paternalism. There is U.S. paternalism in the global South, in Africa. Now you're talking about something that is peculiar because the same pattern is being adopted there in Cambodia. You're talking about Korean paternalism in the context of Cambodia,
right?
Would you like to elaborate just a little bit before we go?
Right. So I did my PhD, my first PhD or my first doctoral ministry at Fuller, which to me, I really enjoyed it because I love the classes.
Yeah.
And I finished the whole thing in 2 years, including my thesis. I wrote 250-page thesis in 5 days.
The Demon, you did a Demon there.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
My Demon thesis was 250-page. I wrote in 5 days. And I thought my PhD would be a piece of cake too. Well, it took me 8 years. And it's real.
Wait, this is it? This is the 8-year PhD?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but of course, shortened.
Oh, you have a longer version. This is abbreviated for...
Oh, yeah. For publication.
Would you say this is for a lay leader?
Yes.
Is accessible?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a Regnum publishing.
Okay.
So that's not self. So that's pretty legit.
Okay.
You went through 15 editing crazy people. So but basically what it is trying to understand why Cambodian churches are not becoming self-sustainable. Because I was part of the Grace Mission Church, Grace Church in Fullerton. Their project of planting 27 churches in Siberia, which I was part of, and I was very happy to be involved. And then most of them became self-independent. But Cambodia, for example, Kamjangshin, Cambodia Presbyterian Theological Institute, planted 160 churches. Hardly any church is self-sustainable after 20 years. They said, then why do we do mission? If none of these guys can become self-sustainable, why keep on planting churches? Well, you're going to feed them rest of their lives, So it became a huge issue. So when I studied that, I realized there's not a financial issue, but it was a relational issue because they immediately go into this patron-client relationship. The whole thing was patron-client. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So when I try to understand that social dynamic as patron-client, it just didn't fit. It was like King Saul's armor that David tried to. So I said, well, how come it's not really fitting? And I realized because they're Cambodian, we're Korean. So and Korean missionaries bring that cup and earth relationship into Cambodia, so it fits much better. So I brought that when I was publishing that, my PhD does not have cup and earth in the title. So when I was selected to be published in Regnum, not every PhD thesis gets to be published. 1 in 100, I think. So I was very honored. They wanted to publish. I said, hey, it's my book. I want to publish Cup and Earth as a title. Well, I had to fight them a little bit. They said, but no understand.
What was the original title? Just patron-client dynamics?
It was actually long, very worthy because it was a case study out of Kampong Som Bible School. And so it was from 20, so it's long, academic, long stuff. So that, I said, I want Cup and Earth. I said, why? I said, 10 years from now, every missiological conference in the world will talk about Cup and Earth. Because, in Asia, Cup and Earth fits better than patron-client. So actually, I did a lecture for, patron-client conference in the Middle East somewhere next to Jerusalem. I forgot its country.
All right. I'm afraid we're out of time. We are trying to catch lunch hour with Pastor Bob before he goes on his motorcycle. For those of you who want to know more about the corpus of Pastor Bob's work, they are all self-published on Amazon, with the exception of this Regnum dissertation.
Well, exception about 4 or 5 books, yeah.
Yeah. And also, he has his own YouTube channel, Dr. Bob O TV, on YouTube. So please like and subscribe. Also, when you go on Amazon, there's plenty of resources. I'll put the link below. Thank you so much, Pastor Bob.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for feeding me.
Yes. To be continued.
All right.